The extreme records of the quiet Earth's climate. At first glance, 15 degrees Celsius or 59 degrees Fahrenheit might seem like an unremarkable, almost boring number. Yet, this is the average temperature of our planet, a balance so perfect it makes Earth appear as a cosmic garden, an oasis suspended in the void. While Venus roasts at 460 degrees Celsius or 860 degrees Fahrenheit under a blanket of acid clouds, and Mars shivers at minus 140 degrees Celsius or minus 220 degrees Fahrenheit in dusty deserts, we walk on a world where water flows liquid, seasons dance, and life explodes in billions of forms. Even exoplanets with their blazing atmospheres, lava oceans, and eternal storms remind us how lucky we are here where the thermostat is set to perfect. But what happens if we take a closer look at certain godforsaken places? Well, in doing so, the Earth reveals a different face, almost a double secret. It shows itself as a planet capable of being ruthless, transforming into an apocalyptic movie set, with deserts that approach 60 degrees Celsius or 140 degrees Fahrenheit, where the air burns like an open oven, frozen plateaus where the cold bites at minus 90 degrees Celsius or minus 130 degrees Fahrenheit, far colder than the surface of Mars, and places where a hailstorm or a downpour can even kill you. This spectacular video, as always created for you by the Insane Curiosity channel, represents a journey to the extremes of Earth's thermometer, an exploration of those places where the climate defies all logic and nature becomes a challenge to survival. Because even in our paradise at 15 degrees Celsius or 59 degrees Fahrenheit, it takes just one step out of the ordinary to find yourself in another universe. Ready to discover how far the madness of Earth's climate can go? Measuring the planet's fever. It's easy to say 15 degrees Celsius or 59 degrees Fahrenheit, but how do we exactly measure the planet's average temperature? Imagine an army of tiny climate sentinels scattered everywhere. These are the weather stations, the true rock stars of climate science. These stations, meticulous and tireless, dot the globe like a terrestrial constellation from the heart of metropolis to the expanses of Antarctica. In Europe and North America, they're so numerous they seem like a dusting of stations, while elsewhere they're more discreet. But don't worry, the planet is almost entirely carpeted with them. Even in the Sahara, someone records whether today is hotter than yesterday. Their task? Measure everything weather-related, temperatures, of course, but also humidity, wind, and much more. And here's the best part. The data doesn't end up in a drawer. It flies to computing centers where scientist detectives armed with algorithms and coffee piece them together like a gigantic puzzle. The NOAA's Global Historical Climatology Network, for example, is like a Facebook of temperatures, documenting over 100,000 historical series from 100,000 stations in 180 countries. And it's not alone. It's assisted by regional networks, satellites, and even lighthouse ships that churn out numbers in a continuous stream, like digital messages in a bottle. And the oceans? They represent 2/3 of the planet and can't be left out of the party. Here the temperature is measured in style. Mobile buoys that dance on the currents, military ships acting as thermometric spies, and satellites that scrutinize from above like hawks. The result? A mosaic of data that, combined with terrestrial data, forms the planetary thermometer, a magic number, that 15 degrees Celsius or 59 degrees Fahrenheit average, which isn't the temperature of your garden, but the thermal embrace of the entire Earth. Science behind the magic. So that 15 degrees Celsius, 59 degrees Fahrenheit isn't magic, it's science. It's the result of a global dance between technology and nature, where every data point, from the most remote glacier to the most anonymous buoy, counts like a note in a colossal symphony. And if Earth were a patient, these would be its medical records, precise, detailed, and a bit concerning. Contrasts of the Earth. But the Earth is a planet of contrasts, where the climate, as we've said before, can swing from one extreme to another with breathtaking ease. Take, for instance, Death Valley in the United States and Mitraba in Kuwait. Both places recorded temperatures of 54 degrees Celsius or 129.2 degrees Fahrenheit, the highest ever on our planet, on July 30th, 2013 and July 21st, 2016, respectively. Imagine heat so intense, it makes the air boil, turning the landscape into an unimaginable oven. Yet some manage to survive even in these conditions. In Qazab, Oman, the highest minimum temperature ever recorded, yes, you heard that right, minimum temperature was 41.7 degrees Celsius or 107.1 degrees Fahrenheit on June 27, 2011, a value that would be considered a fierce summer peak in other parts of the world. The lethal cold. While heat can be unbearable, cold can be lethal. In Oymyakon, Russia, a small Siberian village, the thermometer plunged to minus 67.7 degrees Celsius or minus 89.9 degrees Fahrenheit in 1933, making it the coldest inhabited place on Earth. Yet even this record pales in comparison to the minus 89.2 degrees Celsius or minus 128 degrees 0.6 Fahrenheit recorded at the Vostok station in Antarctica in 1983. A chill so intense, it can freeze your lungs in seconds. From Dallol's hell to Antarctica's eternal cold. So far, we've talked about extreme records, about temperatures that lasted a few hours or even just a few minutes. But what about the places where periods of extreme heat or cold lasted the longest? Well, if that's the question, then the answer can only be Dallol, Ethiopia, where between 1960 and 1966, the average temperature never dropped below 34.4 degrees Celsius or 93.9 degrees Fahrenheit. On the contrary, the Sovetskaya station in Antarctica holds the record for the coldest place, with an annual average of minus 57.3 degrees Celsius or minus 71.1 degrees Fahrenheit reached in 1957-1958. But Earth doesn't stop at tormenting us with extreme heat and cold. There are other specialties, such as the fastest and deepest temperature change. This title goes to Spearfish, South Dakota, where on January 22, 1943, the temperature jumped from minus 20 degrees Celsius or minus 4 degrees Fahrenheit to plus 7 degrees Celsius or 44.6 degrees Fahrenheit in just 2 minutes. A change so rapid it seems like a measurement error. And that's not all. In Browning, Montana, between January 23rd and 24th, 1916, the thermometer plummeted from plus 6.6 degrees Celsius or 43.9 degrees Fahrenheit to minus 48.9 degrees Celsius or minus 56 degrees Fahrenheit, a 55.5 degrees Celsius or 99.9 degrees Fahrenheit drop in less than 24 hours. And if you think these swings are impressive, consider what happens in Verkhoyansk, Russia, where the annual temperature range reaches 106.6 degrees Celsius or 191.9 degrees Fahrenheit, swinging from minus 70 degrees Celsius or minus 94 degrees Fahrenheit in winter to plus 36.6 degrees Celsius or 97.9 degrees Fahrenheit in summer. Yet not all places are so extreme. Think of Garapan on the island of Saipan, where between 1927 and 1935, the temperature never exceeded 31 degrees Celsius or 87.8 degrees Fahrenheit, nor dropped below 19.5 degrees Celsius or 67.1 degrees Fahrenheit, an oasis of stability in a world of climatic extremes. A tour of the continents, from Africa heat to Antarctic cold. Every continent has its own records, telling stories of relentless climates. In Europe, the highest temperature recorded was in Katyniawowa, Sicily, where the thermometer hit 48.5 degrees Celsius or 119.3 degrees Fahrenheit on August 10, 1999. While the lowest was in Ust-Shagor, Russia, where it plummeted to minus 58.1 degrees Celsius or minus 72.6 degrees Fahrenheit on December 31, 1978. Africa, with its scorching deserts, recorded a peak of 50.7 degrees Celsius or 123.3 degrees Fahrenheit in Samara, Western Sahara, on July 13, 1961. And surprisingly, Africa also recorded a chilly minus 24.1 degrees Celsius or minus 11.4 degrees Fahrenheit in Oasis, Morocco on February 11, 1935. In Asia, Kuwait and Russia vie for the records. 54.0 degrees Celsius or 129.2 degrees Fahrenheit in Mitraba on July 21, 2016, and minus 67.7 degrees Celsius or minus 89.9 degrees Fahrenheit in Oymyakon on February 6, 1933. Oceania doesn't lag behind, with Udnadata, Australia, reaching 50.7 degrees Celsius or 123.3 degrees Fahrenheit on January 2, 1960, and Ranfurly, New Zealand, dropping to minus 25.6 degrees Celsius or minus 14.1 degrees Fahrenheit on July 17, 1903. North America's extreme records are shared by Death Valley, 54.0 degrees Celsius or 129.2 degrees Fahrenheit, and the Canadian freeze and snag, where it plunged to minus 63.0 degrees Celsius or minus 81.4 degrees Fahrenheit on February 3, 1947. South America's extremes are 47.3 degrees Celsius or 117.1 degrees Fahrenheit in Campo Gallo, Argentina on October 16, 1936, and minus 37.0 degrees Celsius or minus 34.6 degrees Fahrenheit in Coyhaique, Alto, Chile on June 21, 2002. And then there's Antarctica, the continent of extremes par excellence. On January 30, 1982, Signy Island recorded a historic high of 19.8 degrees Celsius or 67.6 degrees Fahrenheit, while the lowest temperature ever recorded on Earth was reached near the Vostok Station on July 21, 1983, with minus 89.2 degrees Celsius or minus 128.6 degrees Fahrenheit. The Arctic also has its records, with the highest absolute temperature of 25.5 degrees Celsius or 77.9 degrees Fahrenheit reached in Kangerlussuaq on July 27, 1990, and the lowest of minus 69.6 degrees Celsius or minus 93.3 degrees Fahrenheit in Klink on December 26, 1991. Both locations are in Greenland. Hey guys, just a moment before we continue. Be sure to join the Insane Curiosity channel. Click on the bell. You'll help us to make products of even higher quality. When the sky unleashes its fury, records of rain, snow, and hail. The Earth doesn't do things halfway when it comes to precipitation. Imagine a snowfall so intense it buries entire buildings in just a few hours. This happened in Silver Lake, Colorado on April 14, 1921, when 193 centimeters or 76 inches of snow fell in just 24 hours, a white wall taller than a person. But that's not all. In Montana in January of 1987, a snowflake 38 centimeters or 15 inches wide, larger than a dinner plate, defied every law of physics, showing that nature can also be poetic in its obstinacy. If you think that's impressive, Mount Baker in Washington holds the title for the most snow in a single season. 28.95 meters or 95 feet fell during the 1998-1999 season, enough to bury a 9-story building. At Tamarack, California on March 10, 1920, the snow depth on the ground reached 11.53 meters. That's 37.8 feet, transforming the landscape into a silent ice labyrinth. But the fury of the sky isn't limited to snow. In Gopalganj, Bangladesh on April 14, 1986, a hailstone weighing 1.2 kilograms or 2.25 pounds, equivalent to a miniature bowling ball, fell from the sky during a storm that killed 92 people. A reminder of how an apparently trivial phenomena can become a deadly weapon. Biblical deluges and apocalyptic floods. When rain decides to pour down on Earth, it does so mercilessly. In Unionville, USA on July 4, 1956, 31.2 millimeters or 1.23 inches of rain fell in just 1 minute, an intensity that turned streets into rivers in an instant. But the true realm of deluges is Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean. Here in January 1966, Fok recorded 1,825 millimeters or 72 inches of rain in 24 hours, almost 2 meters or 6.56 feet of water. While between February 24th and 27, 2007, Commerson crater saw 4,869 millimeters or 192 inches in 96 hours, enough to fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Looking at the span of a year, Cherrapunji, India set an almost unimaginable record, 26,467 millimeters or 1,042 inches of rain between 1860 and 1861. A perpetual flood that turned the region into an endless swamp. Yet the title of the rainiest place on Earth belongs to Yoro, Colombia, with 13,300 millimeters or 524 inches of rain annually. Here, an umbrella isn't an accessory, but an extension of the body. For those who love the gray, there's Kauai in Hawaii, where it rains 350 days a year, an eternal rainy season. Disasters that write history. Some weather events, however, aren't measured in millimeters, but in human lives and destruction. On November 1970, a cyclone in the Bay of Bengal triggered a tidal wave that submerged Bangladesh, killing 300,000 people in one of the worst natural disasters in history. 20 years later, in 1992, Hurricane Andrew devastated the Bahamas, Florida, and Louisiana, causing $25 billion in damages, a price that blends human tragedy with indelible economic wounds. When climate defies every limit, arid deserts, furious winds, and stormy skies. The Earth is a planet of extremes, where the climate can shift from absolute calm to destructive fury in moments. Take Arica, Chile, for example. Here, rain is so rare that on average only 7 millimeters or 0.28 inches falls annually, making it the driest place on Earth. But that's not all. Between October 1903 and January 1918, Arica experienced a drought lasting 173 months, over 14 years without a drop of water. Imagine a sky that refuses to open its floodgates for more than a decade, transforming the landscape into an endless desert. Terrifying. Maximum perceived temperature. At the extreme opposite, there's Asab, the most humid place on Earth. Here, afternoons feel like a steam bath. The dew point regularly exceeds 29 degrees Celsius, or 84.2 degrees Fahrenheit, turning the air into a hot blanket that envelops every breath. But it gets worse. At 3 p.m. on July 8, 2003, the city of Dhahran in Saudi Arabia recorded a dew point temperature of 35 degrees Celsius, or 95 degrees Fahrenheit, accompanied by a dry bulb air temperature of 42 degrees Celsius, or 108 degrees Fahrenheit. This resulted in a total heat index, also known as the apparent temperature or the feels-like temperature, of 81 degrees Celsius, or 178 degrees Fahrenheit. What exactly is perceived temperature? Imagine stepping outside on a summer day and feeling like you're wrapped in a wet blanket. That's the power of humidity, and the dew point is its secret thermometer. This value isn't just a technical number. It's the temperature at which the air says, "Enough, I can't hold anymore," and releases the moisture it's holding, turning it into droplets, clouds, fog, or that sweat on your cold beer. The higher the dew point, the more saturated the air is with moisture, like a sponge that can't soak up anymore. And here's the problem for us humans. When the air is already full of water, sweat doesn't evaporate. It's as if our bodies, instead of cooling down, are swimming in a sticky pool. At a dew point of 35 degrees Celsius or 95 degrees Fahrenheit, the air is so humid that enduring it for more than a few hours is a superhero feat. Why does 45 degrees Celsius in Dubai feel more bearable than 35 degrees Celsius in Bangkok? Blame the dew point. In Dubai, with low humidity, sweat evaporates and gives us some relief. In Bangkok, with the air already saturated, it's like being wrapped in a boiling towel. And keep in mind, with global warming, these outdoor sauna days are becoming less rare. The dew point is the true thermometer of human discomfort. It reminds us that heat isn't just a number, but a matter of survival, and the climate is playing dirtier. But now back to us. Duran is renowned for its extreme humidity levels, as are the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden surrounding the rest of the Arabian Peninsula. However, a similar extreme heat event was recorded in the Iranian port city of Bandar Mashar at the northwestern tip of the Persian Gulf on July 31, 2015, when the dew point reached 32.2 degrees Celsius or 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and the heat index soared to 73.8 degrees Celsius or 165 degrees Fahrenheit. It's believed that even higher dew point temperatures could occur over the water in this region, but these haven't been measured because you need the right equipment in the right place at the right time. Atmospheric pressure between abysses and peaks. Atmospheric pressure is another field where the Earth doesn't know half measures. On October 12, 1979, Typhoon Tip in the Pacific Ocean recorded the lowest pressure ever measured, 870 hectopascals, a value that seems to defy the laws of physics. Conversely, on December 19, 2001, in Tosansinkel, Mongolia, the pressure rose to 1,084.8 hectopascals, a record for locations above 750 meters or 2,460 feet. And if we go lower, in Agata, Russia, on December 31, 1968, the pressure reached 1,083.3 hectopascals, proving that even air can become oppressive. And here we take the opportunity to remind you that hectopascal is the pressure at any point on the Earth's surface due to the weight of the air column above. It is measured with a barometer and expressed in HPA, hectopascal, equivalent to the historic millibars. Winds and storms, the fury of the sky. When the wind decides to unleash, nothing can stop it. On Mount Washington, New Hampshire, on April 12, 1934, gusts of 372 kilometers per hour or 231 miles per hour were recorded, enough to tear away everything in their path. But if the strongest winds are impressive, tornadoes are an even more destructive force. On March 18, 1925, a tornado traveled 350 kilometers or 217 miles across Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana, killing 689 people and injuring nearly 200. It was one of the deadliest natural disasters in U.S. history. And that's not all. Between April 3rd and 4th, 1974, the Ohio Valley was the scene of a tornado apocalypse. In just 24 hours, 125 tornadoes devastated the region from Indiana to northern Georgia, leaving a trail of destruction. Finally, there's the Galveston hurricane of 1900, one of the most violent ever recorded. With winds over 160 kilometers an hour or 100 miles per hour and a tidal wave over 6 meters or 19.7 feet high, it swept away the island, killing 8,000 people. A reminder of how ruthless the sky can be. Incredible longevity. Between August and September of 1994, Hurricane John wandered for 31 days across the Pacific, covering thousands of kilometers and defying every weather forecast. It was a true sky traveler, a storm system that demonstrated nature's capacity for endurance and persistence. But if John was a champion of duration, Hurricane Camille, which hit the coasts of Alabama and Mississippi between August 17th and 18th, 1969, was a monster of power. With average winds of 322 kilometers per hour or 200 miles per hour, and gusts reaching 338 kilometers per hour or 210 miles per hour, Camille was one of the most destructive hurricanes in history, capable of wiping out entire communities with the fury of an enraged giant. And then there's Typhoon Tip, the largest tropical cyclone ever recorded. On October 12, 1979, at the height of its power, Tip spanned a radius of about 1,100 kilometers or 684 miles, an area vast enough to cover much of the western Pacific. Imagine a storm so large it could swallow entire nations, a true colossus of the sky. Waterspouts, giants of water and wind. Among the most spectacular weather phenomena are waterspouts, columns of water and wind that seem straight out of a science fiction movie. The tallest ever observed was spotted in Eden, New South Wales, Australia, on May 16, 1898. With an estimated height of over 1,500 meters or 4,921 feet, this waterspout was a giant touching the clouds, an image both fascinating and terrifying. Epilogue, the planet of extreme wonders. The Earth, with its scorching deserts, gravity-defying storms, icy Antarctic depths, and skies that unleash torrents of water and wind, is not just a home. It is a teacher, an artist, an adversary. It teaches us that paradise is not a place of perpetual mildness, but a fragile balance where life thrives despite the hostility of the elements. Every climatic record, every extreme number is a story of a Siberian village enduring the cold, of a palm tree bending under a hurricane yet not breaking, of a drop of water taking millennia to fall on a desert. These are the stories that remind us how small we are and yet how resilient. Perhaps this is the deepest lesson. Earth is not a perfect planet because it is hospitable, but because it is alive. A pulsating organism that breathes with the monsoons, trembles with earthquakes, and roars with the winds. And we, tiny guests on its back, have the privilege of witnessing its spectacle. As long as we remember that in this cosmic theater, we are spectators, not masters.